All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the beautiful Los Altos Community Center. Isn't this nice? My name is Mike Potter, and I lead our community outreach at Valley Water. I'd like to welcome you tonight to our West Valley and Lower Peninsula Watershed Master Plan public meeting. Couldn't get that all in one logo for the t-shirts, but we're working on it. We'd like to also welcome those of you joining us over Zoom. This meeting is also being recorded for anyone who couldn't participate tonight or who simply wants to review it. You can watch it on our Valley Water YouTube channel shortly. For those on Zoom who would like to ask a question later on, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen instead of the chat box. That way we have you all in one place and we get a record of the questions that are asked in that at the end of the meeting. And staff will respond to those at the end of the presentation. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we're joined tonight online by two of our directors, Vice Chair Richard Santos and Director Rebecca Eisenberg. And now I'd like to introduce Director Nai Shwaya, who was elected to our board in 2012 to represent District 5, which includes the cities of Cupertino, Saratoga, and areas of Sunnyvale and Southwest San Jose. She was re-elected in 2016 and 2020. I'd like to invite her to say a few words to kick off this meeting. Welcome, Director Shwaya.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nai Shwaya. I represent District 5. Is this okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, okay.
Closer is better.
Closer. Yeah, I represent District 5. At the Water District, our board, we have several board committees who are working at the technical, more detailed level. And there's a committee called Board Policy and Monitoring Committee. And the topic of tonight's meeting, the Watershed Master Plan, is assigned to that committee for working together with staff and also monitoring the progress of the plan. And I am currently the chair of that committee. Well, that's why I'm here tonight. And on behalf of the full board, welcome all of you to take time from you this day to join us tonight. So master planning is very important to an organization like Valley Water, because it helps us to, on an ongoing basis, evaluate where we are today in the level of services that we provide to the community and where we want ourselves to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and then how do we get there. And we have quite a few master plan level documents at the Valley Water. If you're familiar with our processes, that one of the ones the board talked about today at our regular board meeting is the water supply master plan, which is planning for the sustainability of water supply into 2050. And there's several quite a few other master plan. But in my opinion, personal opinion, I think this watershed master plan is of particular importance to the organization because it encompasses all of our services. It's not focused on water supply or stewardship. It looks at all the services that we provide: water supply, flow protection, and stream stewardship within this watershed. And most of you probably know that water doesn't go beyond the watershed boundary. Watershed is encompassing of all the water within this boundary. So in that context, watershed master plan is really, really important. And in moving forward with this kind of a planning study, getting public input, your thoughts on your concern, and then your ideas of issues within this watershed is really, really important to us. And that's why we're here tonight. and our staff for your presentation, and then we'll have dialogues. So hearing from your opinion. So thank you again for attending tonight's meeting, and I'll turn the meeting back to Rick.
Thank you, Director Schwab. And I, of course, already made a mistake in the very beginning. This is our master plan planning workshop. So you're going to learn about our master plan, and you may have noticed some tables around the room. There's going to be a workshop, and you're going to be able to dive a little deeper into some of the different topics as well. So this will be the goal, is not to just be talking to you, but to work with you on learning more and hearing your thoughts and inputs. So I wanted to make sure to say that. And so now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Heidi Williams, who's our acting senior water resources specialist at Valley Water, who will discuss the master plan scope.
All right, thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm going to start with this quick presentation. I need to go back slide. There we go. So I'm going to introduce what Valley Water is briefly, the purpose of watershed master planning, talk about some of the other agencies and partners that make it possible to do stewardship work in this area, give an overview of existing conditions of the two watersheds, our next steps, and then pass it off for input. So who is Valley Water? Valley Water is a local water resources management agency. We provide multiple critical services, including wholesale water supply, groundwater management, flood protection, and stream stewardship. And as we briefly mentioned before, we are governed by an elected board of directors, and this map here shows the geographic areas that each director represents. Starting with the basics, what is a watershed? A watershed is a collection of creeks flowing to the same direction and the land draining to those creeks. And today we are focused on these two watersheds that you can see on this map, Lower Peninsula and West Valley. So Lower Peninsula is the one on the left of this map. It borders San Mateo County. It is 98 square miles. And then West Valley is the one to the right of it there, is 85 square miles. In these watersheds, Valley Water owns a small portion of the creeks, about 50 miles, about 6%. Valley Water also owns some mitigation and conservation lands, bayland habitat, and water supply and flood protection facilities here. The feedback you give today will be incorporated into our watershed master plans. The watershed master plans function as integrated long-range plans where we identify watershed management needs in each of the county's 5 watersheds and determine actions to address them. The watershed master plans integrate 5 overarching objectives, as you can see at the bottom of this slide, and they are water supply, natural ecosystems, water quality, climate change, and flood risk reduction. Through this process, we look to the community to reflect your values, and we use equitable metrics to identify priority actions. To achieve effective stewardship, we definitely need to work with partners. Valley Water's authority to manage the watersheds is limited to areas within our jurisdiction. Flood protection and stream stewardship in the areas we have ownership over are within our purview, and land use outside of the land we own is not. For stewardship beyond our jurisdiction, we rely on partners such as cities, the county, open space agencies such as Mid-Penn, and other property owners such as Stanford. Partner responsibilities in this case can include land use planning, management of upper watershed, parks and trails, and more. Other important partners that we work with are regulatory agencies. So I've listed out some of the main ones here. For federal, we have U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service. For state, California Department of Fish and Wildlife. For regional, we have the Regional Water Board and the Conservation and Development Commission, and many more. And we work with them in their relevant areas of expertise. To share very briefly our progress on the West Valley and Lower Peninsula watersheds so far, in March, we held a kickoff meeting on this effort, and that meeting is recorded and the slides are available online. And then throughout this spring and summer, we have been working to do our research and gather some existing conditions data, gather what metrics we want to use, and prepare setting reports on this topic. And then in green on the right are upcoming efforts that I'll discuss later. This chart shows the county's development through the years. So in the past, the creeks in these watersheds spread out across alluvial plains, naturally recharging groundwater. By the early 1900s, this area relied heavily on groundwater, causing the land to sink, which you can see in that blue line on the graph. Valley Water was founded in 1929 to respond to this issue, and the agency built reservoirs and other infrastructure to capture more local water, and then later contracted with the state and federal government to secure water supplies from out of county. Today, as you can see, again from the blue line, the groundwater has rebounded, and we're making it a priority to conserve water and continue to evaluate projects to ensure safe, clean, and reliable water sources. Like I mentioned, our water sources are mainly from local groundwater and treated water, both water that Valley Water secures, and in certain cities, also water that is from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. The main water supply infrastructure in these watersheds I have listed here, and that is Stevens Creek Reservoir, which is the image you see. And this reservoir, importantly, is not used to provide treated drinking water to the public. Its purpose is actually to store local runoff water and then release it downstream for a variety of benefits. And that includes helping recharge groundwater, supporting cold water flow for fish, providing incidental flood risk reduction. Other water supply infrastructure we have includes a water treatment plant, raw and treated water pipelines, turnouts for in-stream recharge, and then some groundwater recharge ponds. In these maps, you can see what the land cover was in this area. So on the left, we have historical land cover, and you can notice that a lot of this area in the valley was made up of forests, meadows, and chaparral. And then on the right, you can see current land use in the valley, and the gray and a lot of that orange there that you see is urban and developed areas. And although not shown here, the area that doesn't have color to it in the watershed, those are areas that are up higher towards the Santa Cruz Mountains, and they do preserve intact habitat. All this developed land is important to know because that's a big challenge in this area. Because things are so urbanized, much of the creeks in the area that Valley Water does have jurisdiction over are channelized, and they have houses or other structures that come right up close to the creek. So it can be very challenging to find places to restore natural functions to the creeks. One place that I wanted to highlight as a case study where Valley Water has restored natural functions in these watersheds is on Hale Creek around Mountain View and Los Altos. As part of Valley Water's commitment to restoring and improving stream channel natural functions, this pilot project allows Valley Water to examine a new way of converting concrete-lined channels reaching the end of their planned useful length and establish natural creeks with native plants and healthy creek habitats. Steelhead, rainbow trout, and other fish do live in these watersheds. Stevens Creek and San Francisco Creek are designated as critical habitat for steelhead. Rainbow trout live in Stevens, San Francisco, Permanente, and Saratoga Creek. The Fish and Aquatic Habitat Collaborative Effort, or FACE, protects steelhead on Stevens Creek. And Valley Water identifies opportunities to remove fish barriers, improve habitat, manage erosion, and improve water quality. There is also some baylands habitat in this area, and the bayland habitat serves many purposes, including providing habitat, recreation, and flood protection and buffering. The South Bay Salt Pond Restoration Project and Valley Water are working together to restore tidal marsh. And an ongoing project as an example of this is in purple with that star is the Calabasas Santa Monica Aquino Creek Marsh Connection Project. On to water quality in this area. The state keeps a list of waterways that, because of water quality concerns, are considered impaired. And this means that they cannot fully support the beneficial uses defined for that specific waterway, which can be things like swimming, fishing, or providing drinking water. And you can see that a number of the creeks in this area in the orange on the map are on that impaired list. Valley Water and partners address water quality concerns through things like trash capture systems, creek cleanups, and monitoring programs. To briefly touch on climate change links back to every topic that we've covered today. And in the future, this area will experience hotter, drier weather, more intense storms, and a sea level rise. Valley Water's Climate Change Action Plan addresses climate change in our mission areas and includes measures such as reaching net zero carbon emissions and adapting and preparing for the future. And we are releasing a biennial status update on this soon. Now we'll move on to the last objective we're going to cover tonight, which is flood risk reduction. We've experienced floods in this area, like those in the images seen here. The top flooding is that happened on San Francisco Creek in 2022, and the bottom example was on Adobe Creek in 1995. And the pink on the map here shows places that have flooded in the past. Valley Water is working on projects to improve flood protection, and the watershed master plans further assess flood risk vulnerability in this area. I'll now welcome up Valley Water engineer Gabriel Bauman to talk more about this flood risk assessment.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gabriel Bauman. Call me Gabe. I am an engineer in the hydrology, hydraulics, and geomorphology unit at Valley Water. And my main focus is on the flood risk management for this planning effort. So thank you, Heidi, for the brief description of the historical flooding. Oh, sorry. Okay. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this historical information comes from since the 1950s. Valley Water has been producing flood reports to basically, after a major storm event, to document the flood impacts from these events. And that's where this information is coming from. We also have known hotspots for our maintenance crews that are shown as the red spots in the map. And those are areas basically of that have capacity issues that could be a potential flooding concern. So this historical information is important, but it's also important to determine the existing current flood risk and take into account the flood protection that's already been built. And for that, we have hydraulic models, current hydraulic models for these watersheds and produce these results with a 25-year storm event. We use the 25-year storm, but most of our projects are built to 100-year protection. But for this master planning effort, we use the 25-year storm event to focus on more frequent flooding, to focus on those areas that flood more often, and as well as to try to prioritize doing flood protection in multiple areas instead of one big project in one area.
Gabe, sorry to interrupt. Can you talk into the mic? Sorry.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry
you.
about that. And so you can see we have this characterization is basically the flood hazards of the depths and velocities combined. And usually we just consider many people just consider the depths because of you know, the flooding, drowning and potential building impacts, but there's also, the dangers of fast moving waters that we should consider. And, that's why we use this methodology. We have, 5 different categories from low, medium, high, very high, extreme, basically low being safe for everyone, to high being unsafe for all vehicles and people, to extreme being all buildings are vulnerable. We have 2 call out areas. You can see the top, right, on the top right, we have the West Valley Watershed. I apologize, we don't have the streets labeled, but basically north of Highway 101 there and south of the Salt Ponds along the Bay. You can see we do have some orange and red areas with high severity. But it's important to note that this is a developed and undeveloped parkland, and that wide red area is along the riparian corridor. So there shouldn't be people out there during a major storm event, but it is important to consider the unhoused. And then we also have in the bottom box, flooding from Stevens Creek, and you can see most of it is yellow and low in severity, but we do have some orange areas along the streets and roadways. So this leads us to the basically the 25-year flood risk in considering the social vulnerability aspects. So we have it's important to consider those critical facilities that need to remain open during a major disaster, such as a flood event, storm event. And we included, as you can see in the map, the police stations, fire stations, and hospitals. But it's also important to consider those disadvantaged communities that many times are more significantly impacted by a flood event. Many times these communities are more likely to flood, and basically aren't prepared for flooding and take longer to recover from flooding. So for our watershed, the majority, with the exception of the coastal area, the majority of the disadvantaged communities are not within a 25-year flood zone. But you can see there is the call-out box that's calling out flooding from Stevens Creek. And you can see along Central Expressway to the bottom of the box is a disadvantaged community that's affected. Then north of Highway 101 is flooding along a disadvantaged community as well. And it's important to, so this information for the disadvantaged communities came from the census data for low income, as well as an EPA tool called Cal virus screen. So this leads us to basically in our in GIS we did a mapping process where we combined all this to determine to come up with a flood vulnerability assessment map. And we have the physical hazards of the depths and velocities on the left, and then we have the statistical of how likely and how often it is to flood, as well as the social aspects of the critical facilities and the disadvantaged communities. So all those were combined to produce a vulnerability map, which is shown in this figure here. So this is all the way on the right, you can see the full West Valley and Lower Peninsula watersheds, and then we have 4 call-out boxes. It's important to note that this is more of a visual tool, so it doesn't have values. It's more of to usually try to help you find those flood risk areas that are more vulnerable to flooding and prioritize those areas. We have 4 main call-out areas called out, and the first one, box on the top, is San Francisco Creek, which has basically flooding from around Middlefield down to Highway 101. And the flooding spreads basically north into East Palo Alto, near University Avenue, and then east south to all the way to Oregon Expressway. This flood risk is relatively high, and it mainly due to the high velocities along the streets. But we do Valley Water is part of the JPA, the Joint Power Authority, which is a multi-agency effort looking at fixing the flooding issues along San Francisco Creek. In box 2, we have Stevens Creek flooding from Central Expressway, Evelyn, down to Highway 101. And this does affect a couple of disadvantaged community areas, as I mentioned earlier. And the flooding spreads out to the west, all the way to Adobe Creek, past Permanente Creek there. We do not have a project for Stevens Creek. And then on box 3 in the bottom left, we have flooding north of Highway 101 We have a very high vulnerable risk area. But again, I should mention that this actually is mostly an undeveloped parkland. And this, shouldn't have too much of an effect out there. And then, also along Tasman Avenue, along Sunnyvale East Channel there, south of Highway 237, there's some flooding along two mobile home communities there. But Sunnyvale actually does have a current, we're looking into a project to fix that issue. And then lastly, we have box 4, we have Saratoga Creek flooding from basically mainly Bollinger Creek Road all the way down to Stevens Creek Boulevard. And you can see how it spreads out significantly to the west, northwest. And then it's mainly focused on street flooding, but this is a highly urbanized area, and it would have significant impacts. So this is an area of concern, and we do not have a project for Saratoga Creek. But as I mentioned earlier, this part of this flood risk and vulnerability assessment is not only to create this visual map, but also to help gather the data needed to calculate the metrics and develop the priority action items, at least in regards to flood risk. And yeah, so this basically leads us to our next steps, and I'll pass it back to Heidi now. Thank you.
Thank you. For next steps, we are finishing up our metrics, targets, and settings towards the end of this year. And in 2026, our main focus will be developing priority action, which is really taking all the input we hear today and through other engagement processes and internal knowledge, and really honing in on those actions and coming up with some recommendations. And we expect that draft reports will be ready and going in front of the board for consideration of adoption in early 2027. We really love for you to stay involved in this process. There's a variety of ways you can do this. You can visit the project webpage at that link there. You can join our email list either by filling out a survey, which we have on this link, the QR code, and some paper copies at the front table. Or you can email me at heidywilliams@valleywater.org. And now I'm going to explain what's going to happen for the rest of the evening, and then we're going to open it up for questions. But just to explain a little bit about this first, we have stations around the room. We have a flood station over there, water quality. We have habitat and species. We also have an informational booth on water supply and water conservation right there. And there's subject matter experts, water staff to talk to more. And what we would like to hear from you is to, you can grab pens and Post-its at those tables, write your thoughts, challenges, opportunities in these subject areas, and post them in the relevant area on the maps that are on easels around. If you have thoughts that aren't really bound geographically, you can write your feedback on the large paper pads that are on the tables as well. We'll have, if you're doing, if you visit every station an even amount of time, you have about 7 minutes-ish per station, and we can shout out some timed warnings as it goes. Reconvene in the middle at 7:55 for a really quick wrap up. Now we have some time for questions on the watershed master plan. After we.
Thank you, Heidi and Gabe, and for that great presentation. We were joined by another elected official. I want to welcome Honorable Yoriko Kishimoto from the Peninsula Regional Open Space District. Welcome. And in person with our Director Eisenberg, who was on Zoom earlier. And on Zoom, we have Director Richard Santos. So we'll take your questions on this presentation. Some of these are a little tricky to see. All of these presentations are up on our website, so at valleywater.org. So any questions in the room? Just raise your hand.
I have some Zoom ones.
We got some in the back. Somebody come in the back. We also have coffee. It's a very polite and quiet crowd. We're gonna have some work to do in a minute.
Thank you. Does your plan include properties that are private and do not belong to your partner organization or to body water?
So the plan does include consideration of the whole watershed, even beyond areas of Valley Water jurisdiction. So that could include public and private areas, but of course, Valley Water doesn't have jurisdiction or, regulatory authority over that sort of private property, so. It's generally focused on like creeks, open spaces, things of that nature.
Talking about the private creek,
Or private creeks.
it's not.
Yeah. If we, there's opportunities to partner with landowners that, own sections of private creek to talk about what the issues are there, but also additional response from anyone else.
Hi, thank you, everyone. My name is Bilal. I'm mayor in Saratoga, so thank you for putting this presentation together and following what you're doing. I have a question about the 25-year sort of flood consideration. You mentioned you also plan on a 100-year scale. Like, how different is that map when we think about like a 100-year type event? And why are we thinking about that properly?
So you're saying how different would the 100-year be versus the 25-year? There's potential, it's probably not too significantly different, but there are differences, right? 100 years is probably gonna have other areas that flood that aren't shown here, right, flooding. And the flooding will be more extensive. Sorry, I keep forgetting to use the microphone. So it could be quite a bit different, and that's I would have to. It depends on the area that we're looking at specifically. To really answer that question, we have to look at more details. So if you wanted to, we could talk more in the flood risk station later.
Thank you for that. We have one over here.
Oh, okay. I have actually a couple comments and a couple questions, and I'm a little frustrated because I haven't been able to take a good look at what you have planned for flood control. And after putting it off for about 15 years, I finally read Cadillac Desert. Have you read that book? I hope everybody who works for Valley Water has read that book, and I'm really worried because I don't see anything in your plan about nature-based solutions. And that how Valley Water has been doing for flood control, what everyone's been thinking of as flood control. I mean, I think, sounds like, I didn't realize Stevens Creek Reservoir was put in for flood control. There's a lot better ways to do flood control than have that great big horrific nature destroying dam. I mean, I remember when it was put in, it was horrible. It just destroyed the whole area. So I gotta question that. And I'm thinking I don't see that happening in your plan, and I'd like to see it in your plan. Okay, a couple of quick comments. Let me see if I can read from this distance. One is that we're not getting hotter and drier, we're getting warmer and wetter. This is gonna happen with no snow. We're getting actually cooler summers. This is what's been predicted. It's predicted in the 80s. So that it worries me when you guys say these things. The other is that there's been a lot of noise in Valley Water about pulling money from the San Francisco Creek project. I live in Palo Alto. This is a horrendous disaster waiting to happen, and it's abominable incompetence to even suggest that, because we finally are at the point, and this should have been addressed 20 years ago. It is a disaster. You're talking about your low-income communities. There's a serious deep pocket of poverty, right? There's kind of a little mini slum, and the whole thing is going to be submerged. Really ugly. And I mean, I'm appalled that this organization has even suggested pulling funding from that project. And so I hear, what I hear you speaking and hearing your plan, it's like, it sounds good, but then I look at some of the details and I lose confidence. So my question is about nature-based solutions, that you can speak to that.
All right, yeah, that's what I was gonna say is this watershed plan for these watersheds that we're developing now, we're very interested in nature-based solutions. We're very interested in hearing ideas about, you know, how we can increase the use of nature-based solutions. For some of these like other efforts, I'm not really an expert on them, so I can't speak to them directly, but there are some other water staff around that might be able to speak more specifically to those.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Rick Landman. I'm a Los Altos resident. Thanks, Director Sway, Director Eisenberg, Director Santos. It's great to see you all here. Thanks for the opportunity for input. I bought my house in 1987 in Los Altos from an 80-year-old man who used to fly fish for steelhead trout in his backyard. For years, people told me that story was impossible until we found actually museum specimens collected by Stanford in the 1890s. I electrofished with Dr. Rob Lottie from San Francisco EPA at Dobie Creek. In 2011, we found no steelhead trout. I did an eDNA survey of Manadero Creek this year. We found no steelhead trout. They've been extirpated from those two systems, which come together in a flood basin. For 5 years, I've been emailing Valley Water and the city of Palo Alto. Can you please put a portal adjacent to the tidal gate so the steelhead can get through again? Literally for 5 years, I'd be happy to share those emails. So it would be a simple, it won't solve the whole problem because there's many other problems, but it would be a giant step forward. The biggest thing for steelhead, and just one last comment, for steelhead, which are federally threatened, right? Our Central California steelhead, Central California coast steelhead are federally threatened that we have here. You've done a great job with Stevens Creek, continuing to improve it, but it's blocked by the reservoir, as was mentioned. If you could make the Permanente Creek diversion channel passable, then they could reach Upper Permanente Creek. As you know, almost all the water in Permanente Creek's diverted to Stevens Creek, but it's not passable because it's concrete, flat bottom concrete channel. Just the water moves too fast. That would be the first creek in the whole South Bay where steelhead can get from the bay to the headwaters and back with that one simple fix. No dams have to be removed, just restore that diversion channel and make it passable. Thank you.
When did you come to the right meeting?
Yeah. I mean, yes, we have the species table over here that, please note that comment there.
So these workshops, you'll be able to provide that and interact directly with the folks that are experts on some of these subject matters. So, and I think I see our director has an additional comment.
Thank you for comments. First of all, that I appreciate hearing this kind of comments that that's the purpose of tonight's meeting, that you identify issue and then you have a solution. That in mind, whenever it's feasible, down the road, this is master planning for features. So down the road, we're actually working on specific items that these things become our toolbox and definitely take that into consideration. I do want to clarify one thing about that words that you used, pulling money from San Francisco Creek. There's no such decision. And if there are some decision like this, there will be very long public process to get to that point. And also that it's a board decision, so please, our staff are here to make technical presentations. And then those kind of issues, then bring it directly to the board. That's our job.
I don't think we should censor the public. And as the district is the director in charge of that project, I do not think there should be any consideration of cutting the money. That is money voter. That is a project voters select. And I know there's disagreement on the
That's what
board,
I said. There's no decision.
but it is being
Then
considered,
if
which
we
I,
continue to.
So this is a master plan meeting,
right.
workshop.
But because San
If it
Francisco
comes
Creek
true,
was
it's
mentioned.
not true. That's what.
Okay, it is true that the current director who's on that JPA, after removing me, who represents.
Okay, we're gonna want to go on. Do we have some Zoom questions? So,
those funding. So when these staff members say that that is a sure thing, they are not acknowledging the fact that a director who doesn't even represent that community is considering bringing to the board the decision to cut the funding.
I hear you. I
And
hear
that
you.
is
We
relevant.
want to move on, so we have people on Zoom, we have 25 people on Zoom that have questions, and it's their turn to speak. And-
This
and
is.
And the breakout sessions on these projects or where that comment can be better heard as well.
It's.
Gianna, do you have some Zoom questions?
I do. So the first question is, do you have easements for some of the streams other than the 6% that Valley Water owns?
Yes, I don't have the exact number, but we do have some easements in this area.
Thank you. Will there be a similar process for public agency staff to weigh in?
Yes, so I believe there are some public agency staff here tonight, but if there's interest in additional meetings, whether it's one-on-one or small groups, we can definitely make it an opportunity to have additional asked with.
Does the plan include sea level rise, shallow groundwater plans?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry, I fumbled that one. Does the plan include sea level rise, shallow groundwater plans?
So the plan, one of the objectives being climate change, it does consider priority actions around sea level rise, and we do have some analysis in the setting reports that we're preparing now on sea level rise. So as far as how groundwater factors into that, then it's definitely something that we're looking at and considering.
What are the benefits of this plan, and will it allow us to qualify for grants? Will it help with CEQA?
So it isn't, let me try to think about the best way. So this plan is not something that's like a required plan for us to prepare by any regulatory agency. It's something proactive that we're doing to look at the stewardship forecast over the next 50 years. It is something that could help potentially for the projects that are listed in that plan to add a bit more benefit or weight towards applying for grants, receiving funding for the projects that are listed in the plan. And I'm not too sure about its benefit towards CEQA specifically.
In the 2018 SFEI pointed out the poor and fair ecological conditions of the West Valley watershed creeks. What plan does Valley Water have to address this besides flooding?
So yeah, that report and the analysis that SFEI has done in that CRAM analysis is definitely a resource that we're looking at and that is linked to this process. And we haven't determined yet what actions could improve the ecological scores for CRAM, but that's one thing that is definitely, in 2026, as we're going forward, we're going to be developing that. So this is like one brainstorming session to start that work, and then we will continue to be looking into that.
All right, thank you. I have two more. The next one, given the high risk of flooding in the northeast part of Sunnyvale to the Alviso area, how does this play into developers who want to build there?
Yeah, that's, it depends if it's, that area, I don't know, I would have to see how much of that property is owned by us. But because of the high hazards there, I would think it would be difficult to develop there, but we are not the main, we might not be the main land use owners there. So it kind of depends on that and, other, FEMA regulatory, issues. But I could, let me look into that and I could probably answer that question, more thoroughly. Thank you.
I'll just add to that, a lot of times that can be down to cities, so working with them, or like that might be a place where they have some jurisdiction.
Thank you. And the last question I have is, could you please restate the scope of this plan? Is it just creeks, not bay edge?
It is also Bay Edge, yeah, and it includes some salt ponds in the Baylands area.
All right, that's the Zoom I got.
All right, I don't have the time on me, but we have until 7:55 to go around to these. Okay, so we have about 40 minutes to go around to the various stations, talk to the subject matter experts, provide your feedback through marking up these maps with Post-its.
We do this type of meeting again? Like,
So if you'd like to continue to go to meetings like this, I would really encourage everyone to sign up for our email distribution list, either by leaving, you signed in, or fill out that survey with your information. We don't have a date of a next meeting like this, but there's definitely going to be additional opportunities to provide input.
how should we prep people up?
Yeah, so yeah, you're free to walk around at your own pace, and so we can break.
Grab coffee.
That.
Well, good evening. Thank you all so much for this robust workshop participation in this planning exercise. We're going to just quickly reconvene the Zoom meeting so that those of you who watch this in the future will understand that we just had about a 40-minute planning session workshop with a series of Valley Water experts at 6 different stations, as well as our water conservation experts here, to hear your input. And we're going to gather that, and we're going to use that information, and we will be coming back to you to share that and to hear more input on this for this planning exercise. Thank you all so much. And with that, we will conclude the evening on one condition, that you all take some of the food from the back of the room. Thank you and have a great night.